only way to find out is to consult the cinema.
On this week's episode of Remakes, What Were They Thinking? We explore all 4 versions of A Star is Born. Okay, folks, so this week we watched 4 different adaptations of the story A Star is Born. So, and how many hours was that?
9 hours and 45 minutes.
I would like at least 5 of those hours back.
So I've got a great idea.
What's your idea?
I think we should have a visual since we're going to be talking about so many different films.
Oh, I like that. Okay. So for the 2018 Bradley Cooper Lady Gaga, we will be representing that with this Bratz style.
A Bratz style. Very apropos. 1976 version, Barbra Streisand.
Chris Christopherson.
Okay.
Very appropriate. 1954, A Star is Born.
Judy Garland and James Mason.
And finally, of course, our 1937 version with Janet Gaynor.
And Frederick Marsh. Why the Strawberry Shortcake doll?
Because she's the only doll we have with red hair.
Okay. Short synopsis basically is a young woman's rise to fame whose career is supported by an established male star whose career is on the decline.
So let's talk about the leading female actress. So in the original, 1937, and also in the 1954 version, our leading lady's name is Esther Blodgett, but they later changed her name to Vicki Lester. However, in the 1976 version, her name is Esther Hoffman, and they never change her name. She just goes by Esther when she becomes famous.
But in the 2018 version, her name is Allie.
I don't understand that.
I don't get it.
Okay, so then when we're dealing with the leading male actor, for both versions, again, we have
Norman Maine.
However, when we get to the 1976 version, it's John Norman
Howard.
And then finally, in 2018,
Jackson Maine.
I don't know. All right, moving on. So I feel that it's important to talk about the opening scenes for each adaptation.
I agree.
Because each and every one was either similar or different. So starting with the original, we meet Esther at her family's ranch or cottage or whatever.
She lived with her aunt and her uncle and her granny.
And she said, I'm going to Hollywood and I'm going to be an actress. She is the only leading lady to say that.
Didn't she say she wanted to be a star?
She said she was going to be a star. And her family said, you need to get a husband and forget about that foolish dream.
Yeah, she did.
Until Granny said, girl, you're going to go and you're going to become that star. Because I did all this in the pioneer times and you can do the same thing. So, the one thing I do want to point out about the 1937 version is we don't actually meet Norman until 20 minutes into the movie. So that was something I found very interesting. What about
1954? You already have Esther Blodgett as an entertainer in a show. There's a band behind her and she's singing and she's dancing. And Norman, they're waiting for Norman because he's supposed to be part of the show. And he comes on stage drunk and Esther Blodgett grabs hold of him and has him as part of the dance number. It kind of saves his career there in the beginning.
I have to say she's very like, oh, I have him. I can take care of him and everything when it comes to that.
But she didn't say, I want to be a star, like Esther Blodgett in the original version. She's basically, this is what she's doing now, and she does everything she can to further her career as a singer.
Very good.
Okay.
Moving on. I feel that we should compare the 1976 with the 2018 because they basically were the same.
They both began in the same way.
A loud concert.
Rock concert.
John and/or Jackson are late to the stage. John is 3 sheets to the wind drunk. Jackson is popping pills backstage. Of course, they mess up their set.
So you're already getting an idea about the men in the story, that they're not good at what they do, and they're
washed up has-beens.
Yes, has-beens. You can do better. Okay.
So we kind of established like where and when they meet up with Norman in the 1937-1954 version. So let's focus on the 1976 and the 2018. So in 1976, John ends up going to a dive bar where he gets really drunk, gets mad at people.
Someone asked him to sing.
Makes a scene. And Esther goes up to him with her microphone and says, "You're blowing my act."
And with 2018, he shows up at a bar where she is performing. She's singing La Vie en Rose. And she actually ends up singing it on the bar right in front of him, laying down.
And he kind of is like mesmerized by her.
Yeah, he was impressed. I don't know.
I don't know.
I didn't buy it.
Onward. So let's talk about the rise to fame, or as I like to call it, the unrealistic rise to fame.
Indeed.
Okay, so Esther is now...
Vicky Lester.
Okay.
She's given a screen test. And based on that screen test, she's ready for a full role.
No training whatsoever.
Oh, and she's fabulous, of course.
Ah.
So now we have Vicky Lester in 1954. She has a screen test. And she gets a full role.
Oh my God.
And oh my God, she's fabulous. Overnight, she's a star.
Only because there's music in the movie.
Indeed.
All right. Okay, so in the 2018 version, Jackson yanks Allie up on stage and says, "I arranged one of your songs," which I find hard to believe because throughout the entire opening scene, we just see him like popping pills and drinking and everything. So he yanks her up on stage and they sing her song, and suddenly she's a viral sensation.
Oh, she's amazing.
In the 1976 version, John does the same thing, but
Not quite so soon, because in this version, it's like she's pulled on stage right away.
5 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas in this version, it's at least 20 minutes into the movie.
I'd like to talk about the kind of decline, or let's say abuses, that the male stars had, okay?
Excellent. 1937.
Norman was an alcoholic.
Okay. What about 1954?
Norman was an alcoholic.
2 for the winning. 1976.
Alcoholic and pills and cocaine.
Oh, that's right, the Coke. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
So then 2018, of course, would be?
Alcohol, pills, and cocaine, right?
Yeah.
So, and the characteristics associated with it. Norman Maine, in this version, it wasn't overbearing. He wasn't an angry drunk. He was sweet. He was supportive. You almost kind of felt sorry for him.
In 1954...
He was a sloppy alcoholic. He was somebody that everybody said they didn't like, but it wasn't really that evident. I didn't feel that the characters were grousing over his behavior.
1976.
1976, John Norman Howard. He was a impulsive, destructive,
Grotesque.
I felt like he probably smelled. I kept thinking, she should shave his beard.
He was very reckless. He did. He threatened to actually cut his beard off.
It would have been an improvement.
But he was reckless because he tried to shoot at a radio DJ
in a helicopter.
and he also drove his motorcycle on stage, and it ended up
knocking down like a ton of speakers, and
injuring
17
at least
people
17 people
were injured. So
Yep.
he was really destructive. Believably so, though.
Jackson.
Pills
Pills.
and alcohol. A lot of pills.
I
But-
also feel he was emotionally abusive towards Allie halfway through the movie, which I found that to be troubling.
He took it out on her. And
He did.
This was the only movie where that was evident.
Yeah.
That he took everybody else down with his abusive behavior and
Very
his
troubling.
addictions. Yes. We're going to focus on the character traits and how they were portrayed for the leading lady in each movie.
All right, so let's start with 1937.
She was very sweet, she was demure, she was appreciative and goal-driven.
And she wanted to be a star in Hollywood.
This character was very hardworking, she was very passionate, she had goals. She never said she wanted to be a star, though.
No, she never did. I found that in this version, Esther was independent. She was kind of a feminist. However, she was very bland and very boring. Finally, don't even get me started.
Oh, right away in the first scene, she was nasty to people. She was a brat, and she was starting fights. And then throughout the rest of the picture, you kind of lost who she was.
Yep. So if these adaptations weren't long enough, why don't we add love and marriage to them? So let's start backwards. So 2018, Jackson and Allie get married in Jackson's friend's church, who is Dave Chappelle. And Dave, I love you. I don't understand why you're in this movie. You're better than
Bradley
that.
owe you a favor?
I don't know.
Money, perhaps?
1976, they get married outside of the courthouse.
And in 1937 and 1954, in a courthouse.
Where the jailers actually see them get married.
The jailers see them get married.
Absolutely.
Weird.
I don't know.
I don't know. But why did they get married? I didn't feel there was any love.
There's
did
no
you feel any love?
chemistry.
I didn't feel the
between
chemistry.
any of these characters.
None of them. It was
None
like
of them.
wedding takes place in the script. Make it happen.
The end.
The end.
Okay. You know what we need to do?
What?
We need to talk about that one honeymoon from the 1976 version.
My God. Longest scene ever.
So he takes her to this plot of field.
2,000 acres
And
out in the middle of nowhere.
Says that this is where their house is going to be and nothing's there. And
So
then
they bring in all these building equipment and they're clearing the land and you're like, where is
the
this
two
going?
of them, and
Where is
they're
this going?
building a ranch. Now, I'm sorry, how can an alcoholic build a ranch
With a singer, right?
There's no Google in 1976.
The house is kind of like a Pueblo kind of thing. It was pretty cool. But you know
No
what?
way in hell they could have made
You know
it.
what I think? You know what I think? Since they saved money on wardrobe because her clothes came from her wardrobe. It said in the credits.
Said in the credits.
Barbara Streisand's clothes from her wardrobe. So they saved money there and they used that money for the equipment to build the house.
And then they hired, of course, stagehands to build
What do
the
you
house.
think? Huh?
I don't know. Okay, so we're at the leg of this journey where in each of the adaptations, Esther, Vicky, Allie, whatever you want to call her at this point, earns an accolade for their achievement in the arts, whether it be a Grammy Award or an Academy Award.
And while she's been called up to the stage to accept her award, in comes the drunken husband, boisterous,
John Norman Jackson.
making a huge scene, taking the attention from her. She's trying to keep her cool, maintain her cool presence while he's interrupting everything.
So let's break it down on what happens.
So Esther is trying to keep her cool while her husband is being obnoxious. What ends up happening by mistake in his drunken stupor, he ends up smacking his wife in the face in these two versions.
And no one wants to admit what happened.
No, they're embarrassed and they try not to pay attention.
So in 1976, he doesn't slap her, but he does say that he needs to receive the worst performance award, gets very drunk, punches the same radio DJ he tries to shoot earlier in the film. She pulls him into the bathroom and says, "Is this how you're going to be?" and lectures him. Whereas in the 2018 version, for some strange reason, Jackson decides to wet his pants on stage.
He stood there and he wet his pants. Did she pull him off?
No. So because of this illicit behavior, basically Norman and Jackson end up in rehab.
But this guy, her husband,
John.
went to his ranch.
Okay. So, spoiler alert, the leading male character ends up dead.
In all of the pictures.
In all of the versions. So, in the
This-
1954 and 1937 version, Norman ends up drowning. He walks
into the water.
And it's very picturesque
It's very stylized.
suicide.
So the husbands basically feel that the only way for their wife to succeed is to be out of the way. They take the coward's way out.
In the 1976 version, John ends up driving 160 miles per hour.
Reckless.
And crashes and dies.
So we don't really know. Was it intentional or just was he acting spoiled and
Who knows?
reckless?
So then in the 2018 version, Jackson alludes to the fact that he actually tried to kill himself when he was 13 years old. So we knew that
Pre-existing condition.
suicide was coming, so he ends up actually hanging himself. And that's where I feel the film should have ended.
It was deliberate.
It
Yeah.
was very much, it wasn't about her, it was about him.
Yeah, he was very selfish.
Very selfish. Okay.
Time to wrap it up.
So once we know that Norman, Jackson, John are dead, our leading female, whether it be Vicky, Esther, Allie, they go to a like a nice little recognition or a remembrance ceremony, and they give tribute to their late husband, whether it be through a speech or a song, and then our film is done.
Done. So now it's time that we give what we consider our awards to Best Actress.
I feel that it was Judy Garland out of all 4 versions.
I agree. Best Actor portraying a drunk.
Chris Christopherson.
Good job. Best Music.
Hands down, Judy Garland in 1954.
There's some Gershwin tunes in there. Can't beat Gershwin. Best overall version of the film.
Taking it back to the original. It ain't broke, don't fix it.
1937 with Janet Gaynor and Frederick March. Now I think it's time to talk about our dislikes.
Me first. Okay,
Go ahead.
First off, 2018 as a whole. Hated it. Bradley, you are not an EGOT. You are never going to be a Meryl. You are never going to be a Tom Hanks. Stop thinking you're a musician. You're just not, okay? Just stop. Stop. Gaga, I don't know why it takes 5 people to write a song that goes sha ha 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 low. Cut it out.
You're not going to walk out of the movie theater singing that tune.
These are your B-sides from Joanne. I get it, but I don't care.
My point, get some elocution lessons. Learn to enunciate. I couldn't understand 3/4 of the dialogue or any of the lyrics. Speak clearly. And the swearing, was it necessary?
I was personally offended by it, and I love swearing.
And if Kerri's offended,
then you got a problem.
there's too many.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
what did we learn after watching 10 hours and 4 films?
That you would think in 4 different versions they would be able to actually tell a story.
So nothing. We learned absolutely nothing. But we've got something coming up for you.
So we have our first ever and most likely only Easter special.
An Easter treat.
So we will be dropping this on Easter Sunday, and we are dedicating our special to my personal favorite, Easter Parade, starring Fred Astaire and Judy Garland. There she is right there.
Bye. See you soon.